All right, we're going to go ahead and do our pre-trip inspection on the vehicle now. We're going to start out at the top with our clearance lights, making sure they're amber in color. They're not cracked, broken. They need to be in good condition. Coming down to our headlights, we want to make sure they're not cracked, broken. They're in good condition. They're going to function as our high beams and our low beams. We're going to check our indicator lights or our blinker lights on the side, making sure they're not cracked, broken, also amber in color. They function as my left and right turning signals and my four-ways. We're going to be checking the reflectors on the side of the lens here, making sure they're not cracked, broken, also in good condition. Checking underneath the vehicle, want to make sure we don't have any leaks, any oil leaks, DEF fluid leaks, power steering fluid leaks, or anything like that. Making sure that the truck bumper is not tilted to the left or the right, can indicate a broken leaf spring, flat tire, or shifted load. We're going to go ahead and bring the hood up now. Coming over to the passenger side of the engine bay, I'm going to try my best to start from the top and move down to the bottom. I'm going to check all of my hoses, making sure there's no abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or leaks. I'm checking all of my electrical wires, making sure there's no electrical arcing, the connections are good on both ends, and everything is in good order. Coming down to my alternator, I want to make sure that that's not cracked, broken. It's in good condition. We don't have any electrical arcing. It is belt driven. On our belt here, we want to make sure that we have no more than 3/4 of an inch play on our alternator belt. Coming down underneath our alternator, we have our water pump. Want to make sure that that's not leaking. It's not cracked, broken. It's functioning properly, and we don't have any excessive play on our belt. Coming down to my frame, I want to make sure that it's not cracked, broken. It's in good condition. We don't have any illegal holes or illegal welds. And that it is proper. We're going to go ahead and go to the other side now. All right, from the very top on this side, I'm going to start out with my coolant reservoir. Okay, we can see through this coolant reservoir, so we can see that the level is okay. If we couldn't see through it, because maybe it was cloudy or old or something like that, we can pop off the cap and visually check it. We just want to make sure that we do that when the engine is cold. We want to make sure that the coolant reservoir itself is not leaking and the hoses coming from the reservoir are not leaking as well. Coming down to where we check our oil at, we can check our oil here at the dipstick by pulling it out, wiping it off, putting it back in, pulling it out again, and then checking the level that way. If we do need to add any oil, we can do so up here at the top. Coming down, starting out with our steering, we've got our power steering pump back here, making sure that that's in good condition, not cracked, broken, the hoses are not leaking, and the pump itself isn't leaking as well, and it is in good condition. It is a gear-driven part. That's going to come over to our power steering reservoir. We're going to check our reservoir here, making sure it's in good condition. We can see right through it. If we couldn't see through it, we could pop off the cap and visually check that. We want to check the hose coming from the reservoir as well, making sure there's no abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or leaks, and there's no leaks also from the power steering reservoir itself. That's going to come down and be connected to our steering box, making sure that's not cracked, broken. The hose doesn't have any leaks again from this end, and it is functioning properly. We're going to come up to our steering linkage, also known as a steering column, making sure it's not cracked, broken. It needs to be in good condition, and we have no hydraulic leak in the middle of our steering column here. All right, we already checked the steering box it's connected to, but we want to check the U-joint right here, making sure it's not cracked, broken. It is lubed properly. Coming down from our power steering box, we have here is called our pitman arm, making sure that that's not bent, cracked, or broken, in good condition. From the bottom of the pitman arm, we have a castle nut and carter pin, making sure that that's in good condition, nice and tight, not cracked, broken, or rusted. From there is going to be our drag link. Want to make sure that the drag link isn't bent, cracked, broken. It's in good condition. Over here on our, we have another castle nut and carter pin, making sure that we check that the same as the one we just did previously. From that castle nut and carter pin, we have a upper and lower steering knuckle here, making sure that those aren't cracked, broken. They need to be in good condition. They're connected with another castle nut and carter pin. And the tie rod going across the bottom of the vehicle there is not bent, cracked, or broken. Also needs to be in very, very good condition. All right, we're also going to check our air compressor. We want to make sure that that's gear driven, it's not leaking, it's not cracked, broken, needs to be in good condition as well. Now we're coming to our big three, very important, our tire assembly, our brake assembly, and our suspension assembly. You want to make sure you get these parts and have them memorized very, very well. We're going to start out with our suspension here. You want to check our spring mounts here, making sure the bolts are nice and tight. They're not rusted. Any rust could indicate a possible looseness on that bolt. Coming down, we want to check our leaf springs here, making sure they're not bent, cracked, or broken. Now, we only have 2 leaf springs here in the front, which means we could have no damage at all. But if we had 4 leaf springs, we could have 1 damage, so you can only have a quarter damage. Again, since there's only 2, we can have no damage. Coming over to our U-bolts, want to make sure that the bolts on the bottom are nice and tight. They're not cracked, broken, and they're in good condition as well. From the U-bolts, we're going to come up in the very back there. We've got a shackle, making sure it's not cracked, broken, and also in good condition. Coming to our shock absorber here, making sure that that's not cracked, broken, needs to be in good condition, and we don't have any hydraulic leak here in the middle of our shock absorber. We want to also make sure the bolts, bolt ends are nice and tight, and it is mounted properly. We're going to come to our brake assembly now. We have our brake hose here. Want to make sure there's no abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or leaks. It needs to be in good condition and connected very well on both ends. From the brake hose, we're going to have our brake chamber here, making sure it's not cracked, broken, needs to be in good condition. The clamp needs to be nice and tight, and we don't want any leaking coming from our chamber as well. Down here, we're going to have our push rod, which is going to be this piece here, making sure that it's not bent, cracked, or broken, in good condition. And when the brakes are engaged, that push rod should travel out no more than 1 inch. Here we're going to have our slack adjuster, making sure it's not bent, cracked, or broken, needs to be in good condition. And when the brakes are released like they are now, the angle of the push rod and slack adjuster should be more than 90 degrees. Coming to our inside lining and drum, want to make sure that there's no bluing or glazing that could indicate it getting too hot. We also want to make sure that we have a minimum of a 1/4 inch on the pad. Now we're going to come to our tire assembly. On our tire assembly, we use ICD, that stands for inflation, condition, and depth. We're going to check the inflation of the tire with a commercial tire gauge. We can find where it needs to be at, either on the side of the truck sometimes, it's going to be listed, or it's going to be listed on the sidewall of the tire if you don't see it on the side of the truck. We check it with a commercial tire gauge inside of the valve stem here, and we also want to make sure that the valve stem is not leaking. We're going to check the condition of the tire, the overall condition. We don't want any nails or chunks of rubber missing. We want to make sure we don't have any uneven wear across the tire, and that it's in just an overall good condition for the tire. We want to check the depth of the tire, making sure we have a minimum of 4/32 of an inch, and we cannot be running any recaps or retreads on the front. They must be steering tires only. Coming down to our rim, want to make sure it's not cracked, broken, it's in good condition, everything's working properly, it's not excessively hot, which could be a problem with the brake system if the rim does get very hot. Coming down to our lug nuts, we want to make sure they're nice and tight. There's no excessive rust around the lug nuts. Excessive rust could indicate possible looseness. Coming around to our spider nuts here, want to make sure that they're in good condition, checking those the same way as we did in the lug nuts. No excessive rust, they're nice and tight and in good condition. We're now going to check our hub oil here. We can check our hub oil by popping this cap out. If oil spills out right away, that means our level is high enough. If oil does not spill out, we can insert our pinky. And if the oil doesn't come up to the first indent of our pinky, we need to add 90 weight gear oil, and we can do that right inside of the hub right there. Coming on back, we're going to check the door, make sure it opens and closes properly. We don't have any hanging up on our hinges here. Want to check our mirror, making sure it's bolted firmly to the door, not broken, and everything is working properly and adjusted properly on that. It's nice and clean. Checking our indicator or signal light here. It's amber to the side of the vehicle, making sure it's not cracked, broken. It functions as my left turning signal. The one adjacent to the other side functions as my right turning signal. It also functions as my 4-ways and running light. Coming down to our steps, we want to make sure there's no slippery substances. It's not loose, nothing that could cause us to fall and injure ourselves while entering and exiting the vehicle. All right, we're coming back here to our fuel tank, checking our steps again here, making sure again there's no slippery substances. We're going to check that the same as we did the checks in the front. On our fuel tank, we want to check the cap here, making sure it's not leaking. It's nice and tight, in good condition, and inside of this cap we must have a chain and a T-bar. Okay, we're going to check our rubber straps on our fuel tank, making sure it's in good condition, not rotted away or missing, and everything is mounted properly the way that it should be. Checking our catwalk going across there, making sure it's not cracked, broken, it's in good condition and bolted firmly to the frame. We're going to be checking the back of our tractor here. This green line is our electrical line, making sure it's secured properly. It doesn't have any electrical arcing, it's in overall good condition. The red line that's connected here is going to be our emergency line, making sure it's not leaking at all, leaking in the air. It's no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, and it's connected firmly to the tractor. The blue line here is going to be our service air line, making sure, again, it's not leaking, it's connected securely to the tractor as well. We're going to follow the line all the way back, checking for any leaks, making sure it's no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, and checking our glad handles, the connection to our trailer, making sure the rubber seal on the inside is not rotted away or missing on our emergency and our service air lines here. We're also going to come down and check and make sure our electrical line is all the way in, used by that latch. It's nice in the locked position, and it is functioning properly with no electrical arcing or any problems that could arise from there. Underneath our catwalk, we have a drive shaft. We want to check our drive shaft, making sure it's not bent, cracked, or broken, and that the U-joint is in good condition, lubed properly, and everything is working the way that it should there. It's a little bit difficult to see back here, but under there we do have our exhaust system, making sure it's not cracked, broken, in good condition. If we had any excessive black residue, that could indicate we have a possible exhaust leak somewhere. All right, we're going to check the entire nose of our trailer, making sure all the rivets are in place. It's not ripped, torn. It needs to be in very good condition as well, and everything working the way that it should be. Going to go ahead and we're going to jump down to our fifth wheel assembly. We want to check our apron up here on the top, making sure our apron's in good condition, the welds are proper, it's not broken or cracked in any way. Now when we look at our apron across our fifth wheel skid plate, we want to make sure we don't have any daylight or any gap in between there. If we did, that can indicate possible damage and we would need to be serviced, okay? Coming down from the apron and the fifth wheel skid plate, we want to check the fifth wheel skid plate, make sure it is lubed properly. If it wasn't, we could have some steering issues. We want to check down here, that triangular piece is going to be our platform. We want to make sure that's in good condition, not cracked or broken, and the bolts at the bottom are going to be our mounting bolts, making sure those are nice and tight. We don't have any excessive rust that could possibly indicate some looseness. Here we're going to have our release arm. We want to make sure it's in the lock stowaway position with the safety latch the way that it should be. We want to make sure that everything is working properly with that as well to make sure our vehicle is completely connected. We also want to make sure that our locking jaws are wrapped firmly around the shank of the kingpin. We can do that by going underneath the vehicle and making sure that the latch is all the way behind the shank of the kingpin. Or if some companies' policies don't want you doing that, you could test that by doing a simple tug test with your vehicle once you are connected. All right, we're going to now come down to our suspension here on the second axle. Here again, we're going to have some spring mounts, making sure that those are bolted firmly to the frame. There's no excessive rust. We're checking the spring mounts the same way we checked on the front. A part that's different back here on suspension is a torque spring, making sure the torque spring is not bent, cracked, or broken, and it is working properly as well. From the torque spring, it's difficult to see from here, but over there we have U-bolts, and those are checked the same as the front. We have shock absorbers that are going to be checked the same as the front, and then we also have airbags back here on the second axle. Let me see if I can find a spot that's a little easier to see. Yeah, there you go. We got airbags back here. We want to make sure there's no abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or leaks, and it needs to be bolted firmly to the frame and in very good condition on our suspension. Coming to our brake assembly, also again it's very difficult to see back here, but we do need to go through it. You want to check the brake line the same as the front. You want to check the brake chamber the same as the front, the clamp the same as the front. You want to check the push rod the same as the front. Except for back here on the push rod, we are allowed 2 inches of travel when the brakes are engaged instead of 1. Checking the slack adjuster the same as the front, and the inside lining and drum the same as the front of the vehicle. Okay, we're going to come now to our tire assembly. We're going to check the ICD, the inflation the same as the front, the condition the same as the front, and the depth is not the same as the front. We can have a minimum of 2/32 of an inch back here as opposed to 4 in the front. And also back here we are allowed to have recaps and retreads. Another thing we want to check for on the tires back here is we now have 2 tires. You want to check the space in between the tires for any debris, making sure that there's no rocks or anything like that that could flick off and damage another vehicle or person. We want to check the rims the same as the front of the vehicle, the lug nuts the same as the front of the vehicle. But now when we come down, we have an axle seal, okay? We don't have a hub seal like we have in the front. This is an axle seal, so we cannot pop this off and check the oil level. We can check for us to look around the rim to make sure it's not leaking any gear oil or anything like that. Coming back, we have a splash guard here. Want to make sure that it's in good condition. The reflector is in place. It's not ripped or torn. It can be no lower than 2 inches from the ground and no higher than 8 inches from the ground, and you want that to be covering both of your tires back here. Down here we have some tail lights. The white light on the top is going to be our reverse light, and then the 2 red lights are going to be our tail lights, making sure they're not cracked, broken, they're in good condition. They're going to function as our left and right turning signals, our 4-ways, our brake lights, and our running lights back here, making sure that it's not cracked, broken, the bulbs are in good condition, everything is functioning the way that it should. Coming to our landing gear, we want to make sure our release arm here is in the lock stowaway position. We want to make sure that the landing gear is up high enough off the ground where it's not going to grab onto any debris, making sure it's not bent, cracked, or broken. We're going to check the entire side of the trailer now, checking all of the rivets. Want to make sure we don't have any rips or tears in the side of the trailer. Want to make sure that our DOT reflective tape all the way across is in good condition, not torn, missing, or anything like that, and that it's functioning the way that it should. As we're coming back, we can notice we've got 2 more indicator lights here, making sure they're amber to the side of the vehicle. They're not cracked, broken. You want to make sure they function as my left turning signals on this side, my right turning signals on the other side. You want to make sure, again, they function as left and right turning signals and 4-ways and running lights. Okay. One thing I did forget to mention up here, you always want to check every single axle. You want to make sure that you check the frame. So on this second axle, I want to check the integrity of the frame back here as well, making sure it's not cracked or broken. All right, coming on back to our third axle here. We're going to start with our suspension. It is a little different back here. As you can see, our mounts here are welded to the frame, not bolted. You want to make sure that the weld is not compromised. Down here, we have a torque arm on this side. This is adjustable for the alignment of the rear tires. The torque arm, you want to make sure it's not cracked, broken, it's in good condition, and you want that to be adjusted properly. On the other side there, on the passenger side, we have what's called a torque rod. That one is not adjustable. You can only adjust on the driver's side here. Want to make sure that the torque rod is also not cracked, broken. It needs to be in good condition as well. On top of the torque rod on the other side and the torque arm on this side, we have leaf springs. You're going to check that the same as we checked on the front of the vehicle. Okay. Coming back here also, we have U-bolts. We're going to check the same as the front of the vehicle as well on the suspension. Coming to my brake assembly, I'm going to check my my brake line, the same as the front of the vehicle. My brake chamber, the same as the front vehicle. Brake clamp, the same as the front of the vehicle. I'm going to check my push rod, same as the front of the vehicle, or same as the second axle. I'm going to check my slack adjuster, the same as the second axle. And the inside lining and drum, same as the second axle. Coming to my tire assembly now, my ICD is going to be checked the same as the second axle. Inflation, same as the second axle. Condition, same as the second axle. And the depth, the same as the second axle. I'm going to check my rims, the same as the second axle. My lug nuts, the same as the second axle. My spacing between the tires, the same as the second axle. But coming down to my hub seal, I'm going to check that the same as the front axle. I'm also going to check back here, because this is another axle. I'm going to make sure that the frame is not compromised anyway, not cracked, broken, and also needs to be in very good condition. Coming back here, I have an ABS light. This amber light here that should come on for about 5 seconds when I start the vehicle, and then it should go off. I want to make sure it's functioning properly and doing everything that it should. Back here on the side, I also have a brake light, making sure it's not cracked, broken, in good condition. And it also serves as a running light as well back here. I'm going to check my splash guards here, the same as I checked at the rear of the second axle. Same exact way that I checked that. Coming to the rear of the vehicle, I want to make sure that it swings open and closed properly. Doesn't have any hang up on the hinges. I want to check my lights on the top, making sure they're not cracked, broken. They also need to be in very good condition. Coming down, checking my reflective tape on the back, making sure it's in good condition. It's not ripped or torn or falling off or anything like that. Coming down to my brake lights, my tail lights here. I want to make sure they're not cracked, broken, they're in good condition. They're going to function as my left and right turning signals, my brake lights, and my running lights. I want to make sure that everything is working properly on that, and they also function as my 4-ways too back here as well. Over here on my license plate, I have a license plate light, making sure that that's not cracked, broken. That needs to be functioning properly, and that light needs to be working the way that it should be. Coming here also, I have my DOT bumper, making sure that it's in good condition. The reflectors aren't missing. It's not bent, cracked, or broken. Here I've got my pintle hook, making sure that my line guards are in good condition, not cracked, broken. My glad handles back here are not cracked, broken, and my pintle hook here is not bent, cracked, or broken as well. Needs to be in very, very good condition. I'm going to check the entire right side of the vehicle, my passenger side, the same as I checked the driver's side. And then at this point, you'd ask the examiner if they would like you to go over any of that stuff again. Okay.